Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wise Up, a finance podcast made by and for Gens Y and Z to help you be better with money. Today I'm going to be tackling the impacts of the current economic tumult on the average person, the increasing price, let's say even of living, of renting an apartment, of carrying credit card debt, and the effect that is having on people, on their investing habits, everything in between. Now, as always, before we get started, if you are new here, I hope that this episode earns a follow, a subscription, a like, a follow, a share. If you're a repeat listener, I appreciate all the support. It really has been incredible to see all the support that I've gotten. With that, let's get started. Now, something to make clear before we get too far into it. As of the recording of this episode, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has not yet announced what the federal funds rate increase will be. Now, that will come in a couple of hours from now. The expectation as of this point in time is that he will raise the interest rates 75 basis points or 0.75%. I am on record with Professor Vinay Utham on his 1-year anniversary of the Stock Doctor episode, you should all go listen to. It was an amazing conversation, saying that while I believed that that would happen, I'm of the opinion that he should raise the federal funds rate no less than 1 full percentage point or 100 basis points. I believe he should go even further than that. However, I don't know if that's likely. There is a small likelihood, according to most analysts surveyed, I think 20% or so expect it to be a full 100-point increase. We'll see what happens in a few hours. I wanted to get this out of the way beforehand. So we'll see what happens, what the impacts are. As the last time I checked, about 10, 15 minutes ago, the Dow was up around 130 points. NASDAQ and S&P are also roughly up, 0.1, 0.2%. Well, we will see what happens. My expectation, if it is a jumbo, well, these are all called jumbo rate hikes, but if it's a true jumbo rate hike of 100 basis points or more, we can very well see another 5% decline like we saw a few weeks ago when Fed Chairman Powell gave his now infamous Jackson Hole speech, which was very hawkish, and I am looking forward to it. I do actually hope that we see a similar reaction, if not even more drastic, if they do in fact announce a 100-point or higher increase. But what this all relates to, what the potential increase in interest rate hikes is all about, is the underlying issues in the economy. Now, last week it was announced, when the CPI data was announced, that inflation actually was not really going down the way that we had hoped. It was decreasing marginally, but not as much as we wanted it to. And in fact, core inflation, core CPI, increased from 5.9% to 6.3%. So inflation was still going up. Food prices have nowhere near peaked. Honestly, if not for the decrease in oil prices in recent months, inflation may not have officially gone down yet, because food prices are still going up. Rent prices, and this is the one area where I mentioned with Dr. Vinay that it's kind of lagging in the Fed's data. Rent prices are still going up, but housing prices are starting to crater in some areas. The NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders, released their survey a couple of days ago where they show that home builder sentiment is continuously decreasing. Some areas are seeing 15, 20% price declines. So there are some areas that are already seeing drastic collapses. The start of what I believe will be a very severe housing recession, let's call it, because home builder sentiment is now squarely negative. It's around, I believe, 46%. Anything below 50 is deemed to be negative for the industry. So things are not going well. Overall, in the economy, people are concerned. And this is impacting quite a few people. This was a survey that was published yesterday, September 20th. And it was data that was collected by Ally Financial. And what it essentially found is that nearly 1 in 5 consumers, specifically millennials and Gen Z investors, had closed investing, trading, brokerage accounts within the last 12 months. Meaning that in the last 12 months, and really September to November, September to December of last year, plenty of people were still doing fine. The market's still going up at that point. I wouldn't be shocked if it was really more so the last 7 months. About 20% of consumers principally millennials and Gen Zs, had closed their investing accounts. And this is not shocking because, as I've mentioned a number of times on this show, this really, outside of that 3-week recession we saw in March of 2020, this is the first true recession that most people my age will experience firsthand. Now, as Professor James Aaron Brown correctly pointed out when he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, there are still younger, older millennials, even some older Gen Zs that remember the impacts of the '08 financial crisis on their families, but still themselves were not directly impacted because they weren't working at the time, most likely. Even the, let's say, younger middle-aged Gen Zs might have still been in college at the time. So they experienced it, they saw it, but the impact, the experience wasn't as direct. This truly is the first time that people my age are experiencing a recession firsthand, because now millennials at their youngest are in their mid-20s, and the oldest Gen Zs are now my age, also out of college and in the workforce. So there's a whole new generation of people who are experiencing a true recession, potentially, for the first time. True market tumult, volatility. This is their first go-round. And investing is so much more than just an economic game. I brought this up when I talked to Professor Brown, where I said that I believed understanding the reasoning behind why people make the decisions that they do is far more important than the economic reasons behind how people should be investing or why they invest. Because investing, saving and spending, is not an economics game. People are emotional. They're not always rational. They don't always function according to academic theory. I'm not even going to say that we'll be a better place if we did, because it'd be very, not just boring, but it would almost be unnerving if everyone was just thinking in the sense of cold, dry theory all the time. There was no room for emotion. And because of that, when things like this happen, where there are potential massive rate increases in the economy, where the economy is showing signs of weakness, where the housing market is showing extreme signs of weakness and already a potential collapse, people get unnerved and they say, you know what, screw it, we're not taking the risk, we are just closing all of our accounts. Not just pulling money out of the market, they're closing the accounts. We'll just sit on the cash. We'll take the loss in inflation, but we don't want to risk losing even more by being in a market that might go down. And that is understandable, because there is so much concern, if not fear overall, in the markets right now, where people are wondering what comes next, how things will go. Again, with Jerome Powell speaking in a few hours, I know that there are so many prognosticators who are going to be sitting just on the edge of their seats, waiting to parse through every single word he says. He has the potential to move markets today, and he will. And this goes back to a massive underlying issue for why so many people are closing their accounts overall. Besides the fact that it's an emotional decision, there is so little true investing-related education, overall financial literacy-related education that exists, I don't want to say in the market, but in the education system today, in the overall education market today. So with a lack of a true foundation, when people are exposed to potential fear, talking head, talking about what might happen, it's not uncommon without a foundation to just say, you know what, screw it, we're done. I don't want to do this anymore. And this happens routinely whenever markets show signs of weaknesses, potential recessions. After the '08 financial crisis, the overall participation in the market dropped off significantly. Millions of people exited the markets. They lost faith in the system. I brought this up when I was discussing the flash crashes and all the other issues pertaining to what happened between 2007, really all the way through 2010. People exited the market en masse because when things happen and they don't have a proper foundation, they lose faith in the system. They have their faith shaken. They have their confidence completely destroyed. Now, thankfully, in recent, I want to say years, but it's really more accurate to say months, people have started focusing on financial literacy education in schools. Now, I've been very open about this. When I was in school, if not for the fact that I told my counselor point blank that I would not do well in statistics, I would have never taken a personal finance class. I don't remember what it was actually called, home economic. I really don't remember what it was called. If not for that, I would have never taken the course. And I'm also on record saying that I believe that that course, where we talked about applying for loans, how to calculate interest, compound interest, simple interest, how to calculate APR and APY, the differences between the two. I believe that that class is the single most important class that I took in all of high school, period. Yeah, I will die on that hill. And again, this was the stupid people class, one that you took if you couldn't or didn't think you would do well in calculus, in trigonometry and statistics, all the other fun things. It was almost belittled. And that is a serious problem. See, the overall percentage of people who take personal finance courses is increasing, and I'm very happy about that. In 2018, only 16.4% of high school students had taken a personal finance course. 2019, it was 16.9%. But then we started seeing a real increase when the pandemic hit. 2020, 18.3%. 2021, 20.6%. 2022, 22.7%. We are still at less than a quarter of the overall high school population is taking a personal finance course, but it is increasing. And that in of itself is amazing. There are very few states that mandate, that require students take a personal finance course to graduate. Now, that number is growing, thankfully. There are people like Jedediah Collins over at the Money Vehicle who are trying to get states to implement a financial literacy course as part of their curriculum, but that number is still very low. It's happening, but it's not there yet. But thankfully, and this is really happening more so in the Southeast, even in the middle of the country, where some states are requiring that all students take courses. Yeah, this includes states like Mississippi, Tennessee. You go west, California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico even, there aren't the same requirements. And I think that is interesting. I don't know why that is. But most of the states that are requiring personal finance courses exist either in the Southeast or, let's say, the middle of the country, the quote-unquote flyover states. God bless those flyover states. They're doing it better than a good portion of these elite states like California and New York. But still, outside of the states that fully implement requirements on taking personal finance courses, only 9.3% of students are guaranteed access to a personal finance course, less than 10%. This is a problem. Students in school, outside of learning that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and it's a running joke that's really all you learn in school, outside of that information should absolutely be equipped with the basic knowledge of how to handle finances when they enter into the real world. How to make a budget, how to budget for different expenses, how to track their income, other forms of revenue that they might have, how to open up a credit card account, how to pay their credit card statements, how to open a checking account, how to open a money market account, how to open a savings account, how to compare bank accounts, and then everything from there. I'm not even getting into taxes because that's a broader thing, and I don't know if there are high school teachers who are that well equipped to discuss it, but I think that should be done as well. I'm talking about these basic things that you have to do as an adult. I mean, how many adults today don't have a bank account and or a credit card? I would think that's a very small amount of people. And we'll get to some rather concerning statistics on credit card uses in a few seconds, but this truly is where it has to start. We need more states that shift their academic focus from, I don't even know how to say it, from courses that truly do not impact a person's day-to-day life, like trigonometry, like even statistics. I will say this respectfully. Most students, unless they are planning on pursuing a field that is heavily involved in mathematics, but they're probably already involved in calculus, most students will not make proper use of a statistic course in their adult lives. They won't make good use of a trigonometry course, of an Algebra 2 course. Basic mathematics, Algebra 1, even geometry. There were ancient Greek philosophers who thought that geometry was a requirement to enter into their philosophical universities because it taught logic. I think there's a difference in how we teach geometry now and how they taught it then, but on a basic level, I understand it. But I think that we need to make a shift between teaching courses, specifically mathematics courses, for the sake of having high-level mathematics courses, and begin focusing, after a very base-level foundation, on practical courses that truly can make a betterment in people's lives. And again, this is a step above a semester of economics. I mean, truly, have that optionality of a Home Economics 1 and Home Economics 2, where in Home Ec 1 you learn how to open credit cards, how to open bank accounts, how to pay statements on time, how to calculate interest rates, and then in Home Ec 2 you learn about taxes, capital gains, short-term rates, long-term rates, how to apply for loans, how to pay off loans. I think that would do people far more good than the traditional lineup that students are presented with when they're in high school. I think that we would see a drastic improvement in society. I'm not even talking about the stock market itself at this point. I mean in society, because financial issues are, I believe, the biggest reason for divorce nowadays. If we can address a lack of financial education at a younger age, in your teenage years, before you enter into the real world, into the workforce, I think that we could see drastic improvements in society, socially, academically, and financially. But again, for that to happen, we would need more legislators to realize the importance thereof. We would need more organizations like the Money Vehicle to truly start pushing this as an initiative. And hopefully even, a podcast like this, I will try to limit the ego that I, have, not try to pump myself up too much, but hopefully settings like this that can promote financial literacy, understanding of finances, that can truly make an impact, or at least push the envelope so that we can get there. Now, what I mentioned about credit cards is that people are not doing well. See, this was a creditcard.com survey, let's call it, that was published last week, if not a few days ago. Now, I remember when I saw it, I was concerned, to say the least, because I've covered in recent weeks the fact that consumer credit card debt is near all-time highs. And now we have new data discussing precisely what that debt looks like. 60% of people who have credit card debt have owed those creditors for at least 12 months. I'll repeat that. Most people, 60% is not a small majority. That's a rather large majority. 3 out of every 5 people who have credit card debt have owed those creditors for at least a year. That is a problem. That is a 10 percentage point increase from last year. Again, not a good thing. Carrying debt is not cheap, especially with interest rates going up. See, it's all is a full circle, as we will see. Now, 40% of Americans who carry debt have carried that debt for at least 2 years, 28% for at least 3 years, and 1/5 of them for at least 5 years. 8% said that they don't even know. They've lost count. They're like, we've had this debt for a while. It might have been back to the financial crisis back in 2008. We don't know. It could be whatever. That is a problem. That is truly a problem, because as people are aware, keenly if you have student loan debt. That's why, again, that was a massive push in recent months and years. Carrying debt with interest rates that can very easily be in the 20 percentage points, if not just the high teens, will drastically increase the amount of time that you carry that debt for. You'll pay significantly more. If you carry that debt, it won't work. So part of this survey, they also surveyed people, or they reached out to experts for comments, and they gave an example. So if you have an average credit card balance of $5,270, and that is according to TransUnion, another bank, and you make minimum payments, depending on the bank, might be, $25, $40, depending on the balance, whatever it might be, at the average interest rate of 18%, you'll be in debt for 16 years and end up paying $11,875. So from an initial balance of $5,270 to $11,875, you will pay more than double what your initial balance was. That is a problem. And thankfully, I will say this, it is the older generations that seem to have a bigger issue with paying off debt. Now, this might be because millennials are still entering the workforce and perhaps don't have as much money to spend. But even for millennials, we're not seeing that same shift. And here's what I mean by that. 29% of Gen Xers and 22% of boomers have carried their debt for 5 years, whereas only 12% of millennials and only 7% of Gen Zers have done so. Again, Gen Z, I think it's a little disingenuous to already include us. Sure, there is a small age range of us that are in the workforce. I don't think that that's fair to gauge the entire group off of, though. So respectfully, I don't know if we can include that. But the millennials, again, the youngest are in their mid-20s. The oldest are in now their early 40s. They, I believe, are a very good case in what we could be doing. Now, and as for the Gen Xers, I don't know why they're doing significantly worse than the boomers. I might have to ask Professor Brown back on the show for his explanation of that. But people are carrying debt. Thankfully, again, the younger generation seems to be learning from the mistakes of their elders and not doing so. But still, the amount of debt that people are carrying is concerning, and it's impacting the economy. Because, again, as things continue to get more expensive, and you're carrying debt, A, you can't afford as much, but B, as I mentioned, the interest rates that you are paying to pay off that credit card debt goes up as well. So you're getting hit on both ends. So it makes a massive difference for people. Now, 51% of credit card holders with debt believe that the high inflation that we're experiencing right now will have a major impact on their ability to even make the minimum credit card payment over the next 12 months. That is an issue. Again, we are talking about the minimum payment, not the full balance, the full statement. 51% of credit card holders with debt believe that the inflation that we are experiencing now, not even mentioning the increase in interest rates, that alone will have a major impact on their ability to pay even the minimum balance. That is an issue, especially if a recession does end up hitting, because normally, as you would expect in a recession, there's a pullback on spending on things that are outside of basic necessities, food, housing, utilities, things of that nature. So the pullback on spending at minimum, hopefully, I guess, will help. But if they also are in a position where income is uncertain, they may lean on credit cards to pay off things. And that definitely is an issue. Now, one of the other things that may happen, and this is something that Bloomberg, I believe, pointed out, is that this might mean an even more substantial increase in the amount of people who are using buy now, pay later type schemes. Now, there's already been quite a bit of news in recent weeks about people who are using it, not really realizing the effect of not making full payments, carrying debt, and all of the other issues. Now, some are interest-free, which is cool, but there are still some issues in buy now, pay later realm. But as was pointed out, this is not my original idea. I will give credit where credit is due. We might see an increase of people using buy now, pay later. We will see how it works. But even then, trying to guesstimate where this might lead people, I don't know if this is a proper long-term solution to a problem. I still think that the correct thing to be doing here is to be investing in proper foundations, the underlying education that people should have access to and that people need to have access to. Now, overall, let's take a step back outside of just credit cards. Americans overall are feeling so much poorer than they were. I mean, significantly. Now, most people, this was another thing that I brought up with Professor Brown, most people have their net worth, their overall value, stored in their homes. Now, that is their greatest asset, so to speak. With home prices already coming down, that means that their wealth is coming down. Now, data that was released last Friday by the Federal Reserve showed that real household wealth plunged 20.9% annualized in the second quarter of this year. Yeah, essentially, in real terms, household wealth fell $6.1 trillion from March 31st to June 30th. I will repeat, trillion with a T. That number is not inflation adjusted. I hate when we release statistics without providing proper context. After we adjust for purchasing power and all the other fun things, that drop is $8.7 trillion. That is not a good thing. And it was a record drop in real wealth. And the issue is that this could continue because while the stock market overall since the end of June is up about 5% or so, housing has continued to decline. I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. And there are concerns that the stock market will continue to show weaknesses and perhaps drop. Again, Fed Chairman Powell will have a major impact on that. So if most people have their wealth stored in their homes and housing market is already showing a collapse, and there's another significant portion that have their money in the stock market, I believe it's over 50% of Americans are exposed to the stock market in some capacity, either through their pension plan, their 401k, it's provided by their employer, whatever it might be. Most people have access or are exposed to the stock market. So if both drop, you will see real household wealth collapse even further. New records. And that, again, will not do well for people because, again, if your overall wealth is dropping, inflation keeps going up, or at least is not going down as quickly as you would want it to, that's not good. It's really not good. Overall, in the first half of this year, real wealth dropped $11.5 trillion. Now, mind you, it's still above pre-pandemic levels, about 4.5% above Q4 2019. But given that it's Q3 2022 and we're seeing a decline, it's not a good thing. It's really not a good thing. I mean, the last time that we saw real wealth declines this drastic was back in the first quarter of 2020 when the pandemic first hit. And we had unemployment rates suddenly of about 20%. That is our direct, most recent comparison for what we are seeing right now. And it, unfortunately, I believe it's even worse right now because we're not seeing unemployment rates of double digits. Everyone's staying in their homes. for all intents and purposes, we keep being told that unemployment is at near record lows, that the economy is fine. So the fact that we're seeing this type of loss in wealth without an accompanying increase in unemployment is concerning, because if and when that begins happening as well, that, to me, that implies a much more significant drop-off. And it's not a good thing. And we're talking about rents or household wealth that is stored in the home. We need to also talk about the increase in mortgage prices, because what has happened in recent weeks, months, and years is that the cost of a mortgage has increased because of the rise in interest rates, especially the last few months. However, prices have not come down. That is an issue. And I will go through this relatively quickly. This was also research that was published a couple of days ago. And we're looking at 10 different metropolitan areas. In 2020, the average monthly mortgage payment in existing home prices with a 20% down payment to 30-year mortgage, so again, roughly average, in 2020 was $1,191. In Austin, Texas, not a small city, the most recent data, $3,046 a month. That is a near 300% increase in 2 years. That is astonishing. Again, I brought up this point a week ago, 2 weeks ago, when discussing the fact that most people could not afford the postulated maximums that people should be applying towards their rent, given that the traditional one-bedroom apartment will now cost you $1,770, and wages are not that high. If you're talking about owning a home, your mortgage prices are accumulating exponentially. But let's keep going. Boise, Idaho. If I'm asking most people, that's not a name brand metropolitan city. Them in 2020, average was $1,084 a month. Most recently, $2,592. An increase of about 250%, 2.5 times. Miami, Florida. This, I was shocked, was not even higher. The Miami, kind of Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach, again, metropolitan area, 2020, $1,280 a month. Most recently, $2,926 a month. Again, about 2.5 times. The New York, New Jersey, Long Island area, pandemic, 2020, $1,471 a month. Most recently, $3,085 a month. My former home in Los Angeles, California, pandemic, $1,982 a month. Most recently, $4,102 a month. And this is, again, Los Angeles, Long Beach, Santa Ana areas combined, not just LA. So as you're seeing here, we're seeing a minimum of a 2x increase in the average mortgage cost. And I haven't even gotten to Silicon Valley. You guys want to know what the average monthly mortgage payment is in Silicon Valley? So this is San Jose, Sunnyvale, Santa Clara. In 2020, it was $4,504, which is still astronomical. It's higher than most of these cities are now. Today, $9,438 a month. I will say this respectfully to Silicon Valley. There is not a place in America where a home, an average home, is worth $9,500 a month just to have a mortgage payment on. No, absolutely not. I mean, I'm trying to do the math in my head about what that would equate to as a daily stay at a hotel. And I think I'm coming to about $300 a night. I can stay in some pretty nice hotels or even Airbnbs for about $300 a night. No, that I am not okay with. And then you have smaller cities that are still seeing 2x increases. Tucson, Arizona, 2020, $847 a month. Today, $1,891. El Paso, Texas, 2020, $578 a month. Today, $1,175. This is not a good thing. If people cannot afford their rent or their mortgage payments, you are asking for a major housing collapse, which will lead to a major stock market collapse. These two things are related. The housing market is a leading economic indicator for the stock market. And see, it's not just the fact that these prices have increased exponentially in the last 2 years. It's the fact that we have a foundation for how exponential this increase is. Again, I just did El Paso, Texas. In 2020, that payment was $578 a month. Back in 2012, it was $481 a month. In the span of 8 years, the monthly mortgage payment, the average monthly mortgage payment in El Paso, Texas, went up less than $100 a month. You can say roughly 20% in 8 years. In the span of 2, it doubled. You do see the issue. Again, it's not just the fact that we are seeing an exponential increase now. It's the fact that these are exponential increases overall. Now, again, there are some areas that saw these exponential increases historically, too. The Silicon Valley housing market has been insane for years. 2012, it was 1953. 2020 was 4,504. So there, you were already seeing a doubling in mortgage prices. That housing market, I do not understand or respect. It makes no sense to me. But most cities did not see that type of exponential growth. They really did not. It's not sustainable for people. There are some cities that became very popular that did. Sure, Miami also saw a very drastic increase between 2012 and 2020. But as we all know and joke about, there were a lot of snowbirds that were coming to South Florida. All the New Yorkers, people from Massachusetts that were coming down, increasing home prices. But most cities were not seeing that. Again, even Austin, Texas, which has been a popular asylum, let's call it, for Californians. 2012 was 705. Again, 2020 was 1191. That's still a significant increase of, I don't know, 40%, about 50% in 8 years. It still tripled in the span of 2, from 1191 to 3046. So the point that I am making here is that in the span of 2 years, we have seen mortgage rates, mortgage prices, A, go up exponentially, but B, even compared to a much longer time period, go up exponentially. This is a problem. If people cannot afford homes, again, the basic necessities of life, food, water, a place to live, utilities, if you can't afford the place to live, and food prices continue to go up, and then thankfully we're not Europe, but utilities have also gone up, people are getting hit hard. Again, that's why you're seeing real household wealth drop the way that it is. And it's going to continue happening. This, again, all goes back to the fact that we don't have proper foundations in place. Because if we did, we wouldn't have these issues, but I think we could have avoided the severity of them currently. Now, what do I mean by that? As I have kind of made a running principle in this series to this point, because of the lack of a true foundational knowledge of most people, when they are told things by different economic experts, be they on the news or Fed Chairman Powell, Secretary Yellen, most people believe them and take their words at face value because they don't have the personal expertise to supersede them. This, I believe, can be best exemplified going back to last year when inflation was transitory. We would see a small increase in prices, but they would come straight back down. I mean, we thank the Lord for the internet. You can't really get rid of anything. So we have months on months on months of video, of interview going back, early last year, even middle of last year, where we had all of our leaders saying this is going to be transitory, it's going to be a small increase in prices, and it's going to go straight back down. And now we're at the point where Chairman Powell might have to say, no, inflation is here to stay unless we tackle it appropriately, and we might have to cause a recession to tackle the issue that we could have addressed a year ago. I think if people were more educated, and this is, again, the fault of the government for not providing the education to them, if people were more educated, A, they could have called their bluff, proverbially speaking, called them on their ish. But also B, seeing the potential issues that were about to hit them, adjusted accordingly. The ability to adapt and adjust truly only exists when you know how and when to adapt and adjust. If you don't have that foresight, you're left stranded, kind of out in the open. So what does this actually mean for you? The average person who is, again, seeing their wealth drop off significantly as federal funds rates continue to go up, as credit card debt that is being carried continues to go up. What can you do, simply put, to be better with your money? And the simplest answer, and this will be the simplest answer that will be a recurring theme, as you might have already noticed if you're a repeat listener, is to educate yourself. Listen to a podcast like this, but also invest in financial literacy. And I don't just mean buying, courses that someone is selling you for thousands of dollars. I mean something as simple as watching YouTube videos, reading Investopedia, Seeking Alpha, the Balance articles. True story. That is how I first got into finance. Before I ever got a master's degree in financial management, investment analysis, I started by reading, by consuming literature content that was available for free online. I listened to interviews, I watched the news, I watched business news specifically, so that I could understand what people were talking about. So that I could, even as a young person, set myself up for success. Or at minimum, to not fail in the same way that my colleagues might. And the second thing that I think that people should do is encourage others to do the same thing. Because again, society exists as a whole. We don't exist in a vacuum. See, if a recession hits, it's not only going to affect people who are not financially literate. It will affect everyone. If people who are carrying credit card debt continue to increase, that will not just affect them. They will be the principal, let's call it, victims of those actions. But that might lead to increases in interest rates that credit card companies force on their users, other fees that they charge. Things exist as a whole. We don't exist in a vacuum. We don't exist on an individualized level. So the best thing that we can do is not only help ourselves, but also helping others. Educating them, hopefully, even if you can't personally be an educator, pointing them in the right direction of how to budget, how to invest, how to look at the economy, the business cycle, and interpret what's going on, and also how to know when they're being lied to. How to know when the person they're listening to is being disingenuous. Even if they're not outright lying, not telling them the full truth either, or sugarcoating how things are. That is what we need to be doing right now, because I'm really tired of seeing people exit the markets because they're scared of things. I'm tired of seeing credit card debt continue to accumulate. I'm tired of seeing household wealth drop off significantly, because I think that this is all, if not avoidable, at least minimizable. I think that we can all do better. That is the goal of this podcast, to help everyone wise up. Now, that is all that I have for today. I thank all of you for tuning in. Again, in the next hour and a half, roughly, Fed Chairman Powell will begin speaking, so we will see how that goes. By the time this episode is released, we will all already know how that went, how the markets reacted. So feel free, leave a comment. If you're watching this on YouTube, tell me how that went, what you think will happen after the fact. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Now, moving forward, there are a lot of Jewish holidays within the next month, most of them on a Monday, as it turns out. So I may very well be done for the foreseeable future with Monday episodes. I might save those moving forward if something frees up for a special guest appearance. But for the time being, it seems that we will be minimizing the overall frequency of this show. Now, I'm not disappearing, just reducing the overall saturation, if you will. But once again, I thank all of you for tuning in. I appreciate all of the support. Share this with friends, send it out to people, like it, subscribe to the channel, leave a review. It'll help us grow even further, and we will help everyone wise up. I appreciate all of you. Have a good day, and I will talk to you on Friday.